Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about where the Western economy, capitalist economy, is heading. Now, I think few would dispute that what once was capitalism is in fact descending into some sort of hybrid of socialism come crony capitalism. It's certainly not going to, the larger and larger sections of what once was a competitive marketplace where the best product, the best ideas, the best price or the best service would win out is disappearing very fast and being replaced with some sort of hybrid of centrally planned economy and cronyism and cartel pricing, monopolies, oligopolies, and so on. So, and it's very much a globalist place since the globalists took over. In proper, starting from the early 1990s is when they really began to take control of things, and particularly after the early 2000s onwards. The market forces have been just wrung dry out of the capitalist economy, and this suits, of course, big finance and big firms like Big Pharma and so on, where they can sort of impose their products and services and business model on everyone else, but without having to do this through delivery of again best products or best prices or whatever. So the big catch cry amongst the globalists and the multinationals is how to bypass market forces in every way, so they don't have to convince customers of having the best. I mean, a good recent example of this is the antidote, the alleged antidote to COVID. People are being forced to take it, and governments are buying it and paying these paying these already giga-rich pharmaceutical firms that are again hand in glove with the big finance. So it's just money being shoveled into the big end of town, but without them having to meet market forces criteria. So in my view, there's no doubt that the capitalism is on the way out. So now things could change. I doubt they will, but on current trends, capitalism is in its dying days. I think officially as a way of doing things, it's already gone. Now, what we need to understand capitalism, just do a little bit of here. Capitalism allows for private ownership of profit and property. So that's really communism. Doesn't allow for any private property or any profit. Well, not as we understand it. And even if you do they still had bonuses for hard work and so on in communist countries, the Soviet Union, for example. But if you did make extra money, there's nothing really you could spend on it because it wasn't a consumer goods society. Things were the basic minimum required and centrally planned and allocated. And so why, if you buy a raincoat, why would you buy sort of two? Because they're the same crap raincoat, for goodness sake. So there's a few little odds and ends you can buy, but effectively, if you've got more money or less money, what's available to you to purchase is the same for everybody. Now, this is different for the ideological power elite in the Soviet Union. Again, no private property or private profit, but they had access to all the best. They had access to the nicest houses, the waterfront vacation homes and the private beach and the chauffeur-driven cars. They had access to shops that sold Western consumer goods, and they could go and see Western movies and things like that the rest of the populace couldn't. Or if they did see them, it was heavily edited and that sort of thing. So if you were part of the ideological power elite, you could effectively live the life of a rich person in the West. You could have the very best food, all the consumer goods, the very best houses. You could have servants and cooks and people to do your washing and all that sort of stuff, your gardening. So you could live like a rich West. You didn't own the house, but you had it for as long as, if you stayed in the power elite, for as long as you wanted. Typically when you retired, and unless you were killed off, which was often the case in the Soviet Union, when you retired, they'd give you a nice house somewhere and access to again a vacation home, a beach house. Like so you still lived very well. You still had servants and the like. So they did live a first world, in effect, a first world lifestyle. And they front for the cameras wearing some very basic clothes and pretend to be good communists. But as soon as the cameras were gone, a bit like the elite today, wearing their masks for the cameras. As soon as the cameras are gone off, come the masks, and they go about business as usual. So this was the difference between the two economies. Now, in a centrally planned economy, too many, even with the best intentions, nothing is subject to market forces and price signals. And so they're far too slow to respond to these price signals and think it's an error of planning, or people weren't trying hard enough, or they'll talk about that there's saboteurs in our midst that are trying to fuck it all up, and that. So they'll play around with all of those things before they'll admit that socialism or that this aspect of the planning didn't work. And there were some people in the Soviet Union who were very genuinely trying to make it work. In some ways, that they sort of managed to pull it off for a few years, but then it would all fall over or not work very well, or would go backwards. But there was a genuine effort to make it work, and they couldn't. I'm not sure anyone could really do any better than they did. Ideological fanatics aside, and the paranoia of Stalin, and so on. But after Stalin had gone, the paranoia, to some extent at least, calmed down, and they did make a good effort. But by the time Gorbachev came to power as the general secretary of the Communist Party, he realised that they were going to have to do some major changes and have to have various aspects of the economy that were in some way responsive to market forces. But this meant that the power elite would then lose their position of influence and power, and they weren't prepared to give up any of it. And so their attempt to stop Gorbachev, and so I meant that the whole thing came falling over. But and then communism was written off as a complete failure. The Chinese have tried to do a sort of a hybrid of communism in the sense of central power, political control. So it's a one-party state with political control, and some socialist aspects of providing for the people, but private property is allowed, and private profit, and it's gone. It's just degenerated. As, by the way, it is, all across most of Asia, with the exception possibly of Japan and Singapore. Corruption is outrageous there. It's unbelievable how bad the corruption is, and having gone through those parts of the world doing business, you're staggered by the corruption, how casual it all is. It's just a way of life that they think it's. I was the crazy one for even questioning or doubting that economy could be run in any other way than rampant corruption. So that's the sort of the quick overview difference between capitalism and communism. Now, capitalism, the idea is that you produce goods and services that people want to buy, and if you offer them, and people go, oh yeah, I need that loaf of bread, I want that loaf of bread. Now, the basic needs thing is bread and milk and that sort of stuff is basic. It's different when you get into, say, I don't know, people's men's and women's fragrances and things like that. That's when branding and so on gets different. It becomes an issue, and that's why people pay $100 a bottle for some fragrances that someone else wouldn't, because the branding and the imagery and so on that goes with it. But essentially, you have to provide goods and services that people want to buy, and that's how capitalism works, and that's how you add value to the civis, if you like. Delivering things that people need and want, and that helps everyone. Then your money that you make on that, the profit you make, is then spent on buying other people's goods and services. So that's the essence, the simple essence of capitalism. But we're moving away from that, and have been moving away from it very quickly. The elites and the big end of town, probably because the globalists wanted to say, look, you come with us, and this is going to be a great future for you. So they wanted a guaranteed profits and guaranteed low risk. And so we don't want any risk and we want guaranteed profits. And okay, not a problem, we'll give you that. So really is a price of bringing them along on the globalist, express. This was agreed to. Now the big finance and big pharma and all these sort of guys, the big supermarket chains, all those sorts of things, they're very much part of the gig and part of the globalist gig. And because they get these guarantees, they effectively have monopolies, oligopolies, or cartel pricing power, and they're protected by governments who are in turn owned by the globalists anyway. To do this, so more and more of the economy is going in this direction. Now, if you look at the sort of all the companies, businesses in at the top end of, say, the stock market in the United States or anywhere across the Western world, you look at the ones that actually face market competition, absolute market competition without any government protection and that sort of thing. I defy you to find any that are in that space that have to compete to get by. They're just not there anymore amongst the certainly the top few thousand firms in the world, and that they've all got this again, monopoly, oligopoly, cartel pricing power, government protection, and some are being propped up by government contracts where they're not having to compete in an open tendering system for the best product at the best price. Far from it. They're being these things are being hatched by in whispers and nods in the back room, and then they're being awarded, and usually with huge profits attached. And the executives, the CEOs who are at the top of these firms, who don't have to compete, so they don't have to be good. They can be as fucking useless as they want to be. These guys are making 10 million, 20, 30 million a year and more, and they're not risking anything. They've got no skin in the game. Even if everything goes to shit and everything falls over, they've still got guaranteed payment clauses. So this is the situation we're in now, where the capitalist economy, or once was the capitalist economy, is effectively disappearing and or being ground into the dirt, more like it. And so the globalists now want to ensure that whatever replaces it, their benefits and their wealth and their riches and so on. Now, whether they own it or not, or whether it's allocated to them for life until they die and to their relatives, that's another matter we can quibble over. But effectively, they want their outcomes guaranteed for them. The rest of us, well, now in order to guarantee the outcomes, as the capitalist economy shrinks, then there's less new wealth being created. So the primary source of new wealth, certainly for the globalist elite, the primary source of new wealth is bringing in as many third world peasants as they can stuff into the white West, and they're busily doing it as hard as they're going as hard as they can on this one, because all these people are going to need electricity, they're going to need drinking water, and so on, food to eat. And so the globalists can control all the food, all the energy, all the water supply, and so everyone in that economy, the Western economies, are all going to have to buy the basics. They're all going to have to pay for the basics. So there can be a scheme, and this is what I think they're putting in place. There can be a scheme where they just, instead of having a wealth creating and generating economy, they just have as many people as they can stuff into the West, all having the basics, all needing the basics, and paying the globalists for that, because they'll own all the basics, all the energy production, and so on and so forth. And particularly with the climate change nonsense going on, they'll make sure they own all that, and they're parking gazillion-dollar investments in all this. So they've got to be pretty sure that they've got a payoff down the track, and the only way they can do that is to extract it from the masses under monopoly and cartel pricing conditions. So it's inevitable this is going to happen. You can't say it's not going to happen. This is what will happen, and it's just what final shape it takes. So this is where we're going now. I don't know if there's any, other than say a Donald Trump or something like. I don't think there's anyone anywhere that's on the horizon that I can see, at least, who's going to upset this trend, this irrevocable march to serfdom, because that's ultimately what it's going to be. And so given that, I think this is how it will pan out. Now, we can be surprised. I think the world was quite surprised that a Gorbachev came along in the Soviet Union. I mean, who would have thought? So it's not, and he knew nothing but communism, by the way. So it wasn't as if he was from a capitalist society, came and saw communism didn't work. He only knew communism. He was born after the revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution had taken place. So he knew nothing but that. He was so one of those aberrations in history that get thrown up, and you go, wow, I didn't see that coming. So maybe there are things like that, but other than those sorts of sort of accidents or unexpected events taking place, and they do happen throughout history, but other than that, I think we're on a trend where capitalism disappears, and we've got this, going to have this funny hybrid of serfdom, but where there's a rich elite that still pretend that capitalism exists insofar as they are rich and they own property and so on. So I see that's how it's going to go. But I look forward to seeing your comments below. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.